Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to this episode of the Forward Thinkers Talk series. My name is Dr. Ivo Pezzuto. I'm a professor of global economics and competitiveness and the founder of Ivo Pezzuto Forward Thinking Lab. In this space, we invite prominent and emerging entrepreneurs, company leaders, and forward thinkers in order to share their thought-provoking ideas and expertise in business, management, entrepreneurship, strategy, and emerging trends. I'm very happy today to welcome a distinguished entrepreneur and innovator, Alessandro Cillario, to this episode of the lab. Alessandro, thank you very much for joining us. It's a very great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, and nice to see you.
Alessandro is the co-CEO and co-founder of CUBBIT, a highly innovative firm based in Bologna, Italy, and is a firm in the cloud computing and distributed data storage industry. Let's say something about introducing CUBBIT before we start with the interview. CUBBIT is a pioneering startup and scale-up right now in the cloud storage industry, which offers decentralized, eco-friendly solution that challenges the traditional cloud service providers. The company was founded in 2016, as I said, in Bologna, with a mission to revolutionize data storage by creating a more sustainable, secure, and user-controlled cloud system. CUBBIT was founded by a team of young students, Alessandro Cillario, Marco Moschettini, Stefano Onofri, and Lorenzo Posani. The idea has emerged from the need to create an alternative solution to centralized storage, which often faces issues like privacy, security, and high energy consumption. By leveraging on the proprietary technology and then distributed network they have, CUBBIT created an innovative geo-distributed cloud storage provider, which is enabling a totally brand new solution which relies on less demanding energy consumption. Thus, this revolutionary business model aims to be a disruption in the market and to disrupt the traditional cloud storage market. And this is a really highly interesting innovative venture. Actually, it is a hyper-resilient, sovereign, multi-tenant S3 compatible object storage provider. And the absence of a single point of failure minimize the risk of downtime and data breaches. So without further ado, I would like to start with the first question to you, Alessandro. Alessandro, thank you again for being here. Could you tell us how is the storage industry evolving now? And then this moment is rapidly evolving with the distributed cloud data models and cloud computing models. And this innovation is on the forefront of innovation in the market. Can you briefly explain what is a geo-distributed cloud storage system and how it operates, this geo-distributed system at CUBBIT today?
So thank you very much, Ivo. It is a pleasure first to be here. I immediately start to answer to your question, focusing on the, let's say, the market evolution, first of all. So the first concept over there is basically that the storage landscape in general, it's like kind of half static landscape overall, which means that in terms of innovation of the technology, the most important innovation that we saw in the past was more connected to the computing than in the storage, actually. And this is, of course, an opportunity for us. Why? Because in general, right now, the data production is growing massively, which means a lot of data needs to be produced, a new approach that needs to be used in order to store this data in a secure way, in an environmental friendly way, in a way that helps better our customers to do the things. And so, of course, it's a huge opportunity into an industry, let's say, that is kind of a little bit more legacy compared to the computing, for example. Of course, it's legacy into the technology still. So it means that it's something that is not changing since, I don't know, 10 years and not 50 years like other industries. But that's more or less the landscape. So data production is booming. People need to to produce data in several different places. Starting of course from their telephones, but in general we are seeing way more and more the growth of the concept of edge. So the idea that the data will not be produced, especially in the future, in a centralized way, but will be way more produced at the edge. So in the small cities around the world, in the factories, in the facilities of the companies, on the telephone of the people, etc. Which means that the traditional technology of storage that usually are centralized, so technology that you basically have into a single data center and sometimes are replicated among several data centers, are the only solution right now that you can find on the market. And this is it gives like an extreme limitation compared to what you can do with a distributed technology. So trying to answer also to your question about what is a geo-distributed system overall, a geo-distributed system is a system in which you are not storing or computing or processing the data in a single place, but you are optimizing a network of hardware capacity distributed in different places, area, which can be geographically spread very broad or very close. It depends from the single situation in which you are. And overall, this distribution gives you some characteristics in terms of advantages that you cannot get with the traditional systems. So giving an example for the storage area, which is the one that we cover more, the main point is that once you store data in a traditional way, the data is basically, you just create a copy, and this copy of the data is stored somewhere in a cloud, usually in the 70% of the time into an hyperscaler cloud. So one of the big players like AWS, Microsoft, Google, whatever. But if you change the approach, the geo-distributed model gives you something different. So your data is not just copied, so it's not a replica of the data. It's just you split the information, you encrypt the information, you apply a level of redundancy that is lower than creating a double copy or a triple copy as you usually do. And then these chunks of the information replicated are distributed all over a network. This network can be more local or can be global, but the concept is the same. So you're not putting I would say, the eggs all in one basket, which means that you are getting immediately some key advantages in terms of resilience of the data, because you can lose some chunks, some informations, some pieces of the data that you have, but still you can have access to the entire information. So you can have physical attacks or digital attacks and still be secured. And at the same time, on the other hand, is giving also more security, because you are not storing the entire information in a single place, which means that, of course, if you think on the evolution of what we are seeing now on the, in the day-by-day news that we see, a lot of people that get hacked by hackers and lose their data, their information, or maybe even worse, these information are then used for something wrong. In that case, even if an hacker attacks you and try to steal something, actually he gets just chunks of an information, so nothing useful at all. And this is extremely significant for the most critical assets that we have, that are the data, and extremely significant for some specific industries. I can think about the critical infrastructure, the energy, the healthcare, the defense, the finance, so the industries that are extremely important for us in order to run our businesses and to live our life. And that's basically the landscape in which we play, and the technology that we developed, the deep technology that we developed since 2016.
So this is thank you very much. That was very very detailed. So this is a distributed system, sort of a blockchain type of system, but it's internal, it's proprietary system you develop, which has this pillars, encryption, fragmentation, redundancy, distribution, durability, and stuff like that. And also about the durability, I've read there is some particular unique features that you have. The platform guarantees quite unique durability compared to the other industry players. And there are a number of big advantages. I've read about your business model, in particular the fact that you reduce, the use of energy. You have a less capital-intensive type of model compared to traditional storage, which has to be centralized. And there is also environmental aspect that improve about the impact on the environment. A big important advantages about cybersecurity. You mentioned that disaster recovery checks and disaster recovery as a service, regulatory compliance, edge computing, data sovereignty, and business continuity. So there is apparently a lot. This fragmentation really gives a lot of innovations and resilience. So could you explain a little bit by creating this business model how your company impact the stack system, the tech ecosystem? What are the areas of the value chain that your companies really focus on when it's delivering its service in this cloud computing industry? Which part of the value chain you focus? Because I remember you mentioned something between the infrastructures, the software as a service, or something like that. Could you delve a bit more about where are you in the value chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we want to simplify a little bit, the landscape in general of the cloud services overall and the software as a service models, basically, I always use this idea of separating in three main layers for understanding this. So the lower layer, of course, is the hardware part. So over there, we have a lot of companies well known all around the world. The last one, very famous, is NVIDIA, of course, who is running a lot of GPUs all around the world. But at the end, you have also, I don't know, Dell, HPE, Pure Storage. You have several of these companies, Supermicro, that are Toshiba, Fujitsu, all these players that are producing the hardware part. So it's the lower part, the part that was developed as the first one in the IT in general, and of course was necessary in order to run all the other technologies on top. Then the upper one, so the number one layer, let's say, is the software as a service layer. So basically, every single time we use a software, it might be Facebook, Airbnb, or whatever in the internet, or it might be, of course, something more for a single company. Still, we are using a software as a service model or something similar to that. That, of course, is offering the services or the tools that you want to use, and so you can interact with it with the user interface and all the rest. Now, in the middle, of course, of these two layers, we have the cloud, and the cloud is nothing else than data centers. So basically, the data centers players, the data centers companies, are just buying the hardware from the lower layer and producing the APIs and the tools in order to run software as a service on top. So that's more or less the level of right now of the situation, and you can see it for the computing part, and you can see it for the storage part. Basically, the concept is the same. Now, the value chain that we approach, of course, is made by these steps, and what we need to do is to understand our right fit. And so what we did in the past was trying to understanding exactly what was our core value, and we understood that the core value for us was, of course, to creating a great software, because it's what we are coming from. We have a lot of expertise over there, very great co-founders in this ecosystem for the software development, and so we decided to focus on that. Now, if you have a software, basically you can stay between the hardware and the cloud, or between the cloud and the software as a service. And basically what we decided to do is to stay between the hardware and the cloud. Why? Because we were very able to deploy this distributed network that basically gives more power to the hardware that you have and to the cloud services that you can run. So we decided to stay more or less on that layer. In which way particularly? The idea is to enable cloud provider, service provider, but even enterprises that are deploying basically their own data centers to run a distributed cloud storage solution, and in the future even computing, by themselves. So without using the hyperscalers technologies of the big guys like Microsoft, Amazon, etc. And so that's basically the fit in which we want to focus on, which is growing massively, because in the cloud market, of course, you have these three big players that are covering, for example, in Europe, something around 70% of the market. Then you have this 30% of the market that is striving to compete. And so you can give to this 30% something very powerful in order to scratch a little bit more, to take a little bit more also of the market of the other guys. Plus, the data are booming. And so you can leverage on that.
And thank you. That's very clear. And so by owning, basically by not owning the data centers yourself, this, as I understood correctly, allows you to have a lower operational costs that are substantially reduced, thus passing on the benefit, the savings to the end user, who can benefit, I read somewhere, from up to 80% reduction in cloud storage. That's really important, because you can have this value that's passed to the users, and you also have a more sustainable business model, reducing costs and benefiting the environment. And I think you have a subscription-based model as a main value proposition. This is so having to scale the platform in order to increase the user base and expand into international market. You are basically a born global firm. So how is it challenging for a firm like you to go from bootstrapping and crowdfunding to accelerators and getting tractions and scaling up, and all this in a sort of a pragmatic approach in a very competitive environment where there are big, giant global players? You mentioned before the names that compete with you. How do you go from being, and what kind of culture, what kind of corporate cultures does it take for entrepreneurs, a team like the team you started, to really develop a resilient and strategic plan to compete in such innovative market with the big guys?
Yeah, I would say that in a very competitive market, if you can, if I can use an image for that is pretty famous, let's say that you should be more hungry than foolish. That's if you want to use a good metaphor of someone that was way more expert than me in doing business. Because of course, I mean, under the hood, a lot of things are happening, even if you have these big players all around. Actually, these big players might become in the future even an opportunity, because of course you can also do something together with them by using your technology. For example, enabling a lot of edge use cases that they are not using, that are not enabling right now. So on that scenario, I would say the most critical part was, of course, to put one step after the other, which means you start by basically having nothing. So we were first-time founders, no money in the pocket, to be invested, nothing, no experience before in startup world, etc. So at the end, we were very hungry, if you want, but still. We hadn't the possibility, I would say, to just invest directly and put our credibility in order to run the business. So it was very tough, especially at the beginning. For the first years, it was difficult to explain to people the value of what we were doing, also because we launched the company in Italy. We have been in Tel Aviv for 6 months to run cybersecurity programs, etc. So, for example, in Tel Aviv, there was way more experience and understanding about what we were doing, way more than in Italy, for example. And so it was difficult at the beginning. Of course, this is also training you. So it helps a lot in understanding that you will face a lot of troubles, you will face a lot of no that you will receive, and a lot of problems over there, but at the end you can reach, you know, the next step if you you maintain, let's say, your resiliency, and you keep continuing in what you're doing. At the end, probably is one of the secret sauce is just never give up.
Perseverance, perseverance.
Yeah, exactly.
A sort of pragmatic agility, you know,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
adapting, and perseverance at the
yeah,
same time. And the fact the guy, the team was very cohesive, very, you know,
yeah.
very committed on this one. Just one thing, I read that you know, your company offers a more sustainable, environmentally friendly solutions, and the customers can really benefit a lot from, and the environment, society on this side. So was that part of the initial vision, the fact and your purpose, the fact you wanted to create not just more safer distributed cloud storage, but also with a close eye to the sustainability and to this environmentally friendly aspects?
Yeah, so this was very important for us since the beginning. One of our main investors right now is ETF, which is an environmental technology fund, actually based in UK. And I think that the explanation of the saving, the protection for the planet that we are trying to put, of course, I mean, we are running services that are critical because we'll grow a lot in the future. And we know the impact that they generate. You can consider that just the data centers all over the world are consuming something like 3.5% of the energy of the planet at the moment. And looking at, I mean, the situation, I mean, I'm from Bologna. A few days ago, we had this flood here. So we saw what is the impact of the climate change. But what it's extremely simple to be understood in our technology is that if you want to use a traditional storage service and you want to have secure data, what you have to do is to create copies of your data, 2 or 3 copies at least, in order to be sure that in some way you can take back the data if something is going wrong in some specific place. With our technology, in a distributed environment, you don't have to do a 3x of the copies of the data, but you can reach something like a 1.4 to 1.7x of the data themselves. So all the rest that you're not using is basically something that you save. You don't have to produce these servers. You don't have to use these servers. You don't have to connect them, to use the energy to let them work. And this is extremely important. Why? Because of course, once you imagine the scale of the growth of the data themselves, the storage part will be one of the most impactful part. As well as, of course, the AI that we know is consuming a lot. So at the end, this is the angle that we want to approach, and it's something that we really care of.
And we've seen in the last couple of years, especially after the energy shocks that we've had, and the you know, all these challenges after COVID as well, the importance of energy sustainability and the importance of infrastructures for growth. And lately, I read we've seen significant movements in the market from big players on this issue, the concern. For example, Google signed a corporate agreement with Kairos Power to buy power from multiple small modular reactors, nuclear stuff, to meet electricity demand of the future demand for artificial intelligence. Amazon has done something similar, purchasing a nuclear power center. And Microsoft and Constellation Energy also signed deals to work again on the 3 Mile Island plant in Pennsylvania. And there are analysis on the market saying that data centers will need to roughly triple between 2023 2030, according to a study from Goldman Sachs. So the question becomes, how do you foresee nuclear energy in this landscape, meaning the latest generation of nuclear energy, the small nuclear reactors, as a solution to have a sort of unlimited energy to go alongside with a big need for data centers and AI demand?
So of course, it's a great question. I mean, we're gonna need in the future a lot of energy more in any case, even without data centers, because people, I mean, are growing massively. The number of people in the world is growing massively, and at the moment, there's no way to, I mean, reduce the growth of demand of energy that we will need. Of course, if you see it from a data center perspective in general, they know that they have the money that they can invest into this industry, and in some way I see it in a positive way, which is, of course, they are helping the innovation into an industry which for several decades was not so invested, just because we know, I mean, what happened, you know, in Chernobyl and in many other bad situations over there. But that reduced a lot in the past the possibility to innovate into something that was actually extremely useful, but very dangerous for several reasons. So the opportunity to do these small, you know, systems in order to run the nuclear energy, it's very interesting. The nuclear fusion, of course, is something that is more like a long shot, but that we are looking at. We have companies also in Italy that are trying to do that, taking nuclear, of course, in Turin, that is trying to do something like that, and all over Europe. So at the end, I really believe that in some way this pushing that is coming, because as always, you do innovation when you see a demand growing. So the push from these hyperscalers, big players into the nuclear probably will support better innovation, because somewhere, somehow, someone will find a way in order to produce a clean energy in a nuclear way, in a secure way, that is helping us, of course, in getting this energy. On the other hand, of course, we need to consider what we can reduce, because at the end of the day, it's not just about, I mean, we can produce more energy, so let's do it, because it creates heat, other, you know, problems that we need to manage. So in some way, we need to find a balance on that.
Yeah, and the energy mix also for geopolitical and energy independence purposes that we're trying to achieve these days in the latest trends. Alessandro, as edge and cloud interoperability advances, data grows exponentially year after year. With AI, it's going to be much more than that. And also IoT devices, smart cities initiatives, all these incredible innovations which will bring us into the future, a future with seamless cloud edge integration. To what extent have organizations so far adopted to these interoperability solutions where cloud and edge interoperability advances and connect? And how far are we from real integration between cloud and edge?
I would say quite far in a real environment. So specific projects are going well, dedicated one, I would say, but we don't have actually right now the scale and probably the idea of the real use cases that we can generate over there. So it's something that is coming. Probably, I mean, as always, US more advanced than the rest of the world. But still in a situation in which you don't have a massive market as big as the one that was generated, I don't know, by the cloud in the past. So I think that we will need probably other 3 to 5 years in order to really see a massive impact of that. Why? Also because the most important impact of this new area, that is the edge, is coming from very legacy companies. So if you consider where the most data will be produced, it's, I don't know, the manufacturing companies, or the high roads companies, or the, I don't know, train companies. So very legacy with another approach, not very digital most of the time. So it will take a little bit more time in order to have this massive amount generated. Of course, we already have some very good business cases and use cases, but there's some work to do.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. And how do you foresee, looking forward, decentralized storage data sovereignty and this sustainability of the digital cloud storage and cloud infrastructure in this area of AI, generative AI, IoT, augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality. I mean, as this thing grow, do you see decentralized storage going mainstream rather than being niche compared to the big giant? Would that would be more sort of mainstream and more broadly developed in the different industries, or do you see it more like remaining more sort of a niche market?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, of course, we don't think that will be a niche market because the combination between the technology and the behaviors of the companies are bringing to this direction. So even the hyperscalers, even the big cloud providers are trying to understand how to manage the edge things, etc. So getting something that is distributed for sure will become very important in the future, probably. We cannot foresee, of course, the level of impact because we already have a kind of structured industry in which the centralized cloud is very important. So I'm not a believer of the distributed cloud will be the only way to do things in 15 years from now. Of course, I hope to be wrong. So maybe it will be even better for us. But to be extremely concrete, there's a massive market that is still growing, and probably this kind of technologies for specific industry will be critical and extremely useful. For other industries will be a little bit less useful, and so I don't expect to be into a niche. So I don't expect to be in a market that the value is a few billions. Of course, it will be a market of several trillions probably in the future, but still we have to consider that there are some use cases for which the distributed cloud is not exactly necessarily, and so that's the idea, in my opinion. Very short.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's okay. It's okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for your precious time. I know that when you run a scale up, time it's always a big challenge.
You always want double the time that you have, let's say.
No, it's okay, but I appreciate a lot because I understand how difficult it is for you to dedicate all this time, and your contribution has been really extremely valuable, and your also personal experience as an entrepreneur is always very enlightening for all the viewers and participants. Thank you very much. I look forward to meeting you again, and good luck for everything.
Thank you, Ivo, and thank you for the passion that you're always putting in your projects, because it's great and gives energy also to the others. See you soon.
See you soon. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Bye.